June 30th, 1944, near Cherbourg. The underground hospital cave was heavy with the smell of blood, smoke, and boiled bandages. Dr. Anna Weiss stepped slowly out of the tunnel's darkness. Her white coat hung loosely on her thin shoulders. Her hands were raised in surrender, and her eyes squinted against the daylight she had not seen for days. Only hours earlier, in the candlelit corridors of the bunker hospital, she had told her fellow nurses, "The Americans cannot possibly have the medical supplies they claim. It must be propaganda now." Those words were about to collapse under the weight of reality. Behind her, 8 exhausted German army nurses followed. They were among the first German nurses captured by American forces in France. In the final desperate days of the siege, they had worked without rest, treating endless waves of wounded soldiers by candlelight, reusing bandages until they fell apart, saving the last drops of morphine for the dying. None of them imagined that within hours they would see a level of medicine so advanced it would shake everything they believed in. Colonel Robert L. Hayes of the American 45th Evacuation Hospital watched the captured women with calm curiosity. They were enemies, yes, but also fellow healers. Under the Geneva Convention, they would soon be returned to German lines, but before that, they would witness American medicine in 1944. The story had really begun a year earlier, in May 1943, when General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim surrendered in Tunisia. Among the 250,000 Axis troops who laid down their arms were thousands of German doctors, orderlies, and nurses. Many of them had served with Rommel's Afrika Korps, including Red Cross nurses Clara Stein and Margareta Bauer. They had dedicated their lives to the Reich, but captivity would destroy the illusions they lived by. One nurse later wrote, "The Americans throw away more medical supplies in one day than we receive in a month. They have medicines we have only heard about." The shock began during the journey. Captured German nurses boarded Liberty ships bound for the United States. Mass-produced vessels the Nazis had said were impossible to build in such numbers. Their medical bays were bright with steady electric light, equipped with X-ray machines, sterilized tools, and refrigerated storage for medicines. Blood plasma was safely kept in labeled containers, eliminating the risky direct transfusions German doctors still used. For women who had worked by candlelight and measured sulfa powder by the grain, this abundance was another world. When they arrived in America, the surprises multiplied. At the prisoner camps, the nurses received full medical exams. They were given dental care, eyeglasses, and treatment for chronic illnesses. They were well fed, and at Christmas they received gifts of chocolate, cigarettes, and soap, luxuries their families in Germany had not seen for years. For women raised on propaganda that called Americans weak and selfish, this kindness toward enemies was more shocking than the medicine itself. In camps like Opelika, Alabama, some German nurses worked in fully equipped hospitals, sometimes alongside American doctors and nurses. The technology was decades ahead of what they had known. Adjustable surgical lamps, electric cauterization, fast sterilization with autoclaves, and pharmacies stocked with hundreds of medicines. But the greatest discovery was penicillin. America was producing it by the billions of units. For German nurses who had watched soldiers die from infection, it felt like witnessing a miracle. Where they would have amputated, the Americans saved limbs. Where they had seen men die of sepsis, the Americans restored them to life within days. Even more startling were the African-American nurses. They were educated, confident, and skilled. They gave orders, corrected German techniques, and demonstrated mastery of medicine. Everything Nazi ideology had taught about race collapsed in the face of this undeniable truth. By 1944 and 45, German medical personnel in captivity were being trained in American methods. They learned public health, sanitation, vaccination programs, and epidemic control. They studied American medical literature, discovering that many breakthroughs they admired had been made by Jewish scientists, the very people the Nazis had expelled or killed. For many, this realization was painful, but it changed them deeply. They began to understand that medicine's true purpose was not to serve ideology, but to serve humanity. They saw American doctors treat German prisoners with the same care given to Allied soldiers. They saw healing rise, above hate. When the war ended, these women returned to a ruined Germany. Hospitals lay in rubble. Supplies were scarce. Millions needed care. They brought back not only new techniques, but a new belief that medicine must serve all people equally. They rebuilt hospitals, founded nursing schools, and introduced practices like blood banking, antibiotic therapy, and professional nursing independence. Years later, one nurse wrote, "We came as prisoners. We left as witnesses to the true purpose of medicine through compassion, science, and progress. America achieved something no weapon could, the transformation of belief. These women were changed, not by force, but by truth and humanity." It was one of the quietest, yet most powerful victories of the war, the victory of healing over hate.